than it existed. Is that clear to everybody?
What happens if he never
Then it wouldn't happen. That's the problem with Davar She'eino Ba'olam.
It wouldn't be considered a marriage from the beginning.
Correct. But I'm saying that's the whole issue with Davar She'eino Ba'olam. What happens if I sell wheat futures and if I sell orange futures and there's a hurricane and it kills all the orange trees? In our world, the purchaser loses. In the halachic world, those that hold you can't sell Davar She'eino Ba'olam don't want that to happen. That's why there was the Tana who said if there never are any dates, the original guy can cancel the transaction. Now that's counterintuitive, but if their dates don't appear, that means dates will go way up in price, and what few dates are around will be very valuable. So the owner can cancel the transaction.
In that case, the woman, let's say she gets pregnant before that
the
time,
kid's a mamzer.
Why would it be a mamzer?
Yeah.
It wasn't a real marriage
It
then.
would be maybe, because he was a slave. And kid would be a mamzer. A free woman has a baby with a slave, it's a mamzer. And if it's the other way around, if the slave is the woman, the kid is owned by the master. Well, anyway, let's go weiter. Reb Meir, what about Reb Meir? The Sanya, we have a brisa, ha'aymer le'isha hare at mikudeshes li la'acher shetegayer. You see a gorgeous shiksa, and you want to marry her. Now, if she goes to the rabbis and say, I want to get married to a Jew, can I please convert? The rabbis would send her away. But if you are Mekadesh her now, on the basis of after she becomes Jewish, that the Kedushin is retroactive, she could legitimately say to the rabbis, no, I'm not converting for the sake of marriage. She could have it's a harama, but she could, with a clear conscience, say that's not my intent, because it was already a done deal in her mind, and therefore they might well convert her. So what happens if he does that? We had this case, I think on Sunday. Or a non-Jew says he's gorgeous, he's got millions of dollars, there's only flaws, he's not Jewish. So he says, okay, let's be engaged retroactively to this moment as soon as I do convert. Okay? Or you say a slave says to a Jewish girl, until as soon as I'm freed, we'll be engaged retroactively, or a pretty slave girl, you'll be engaged to me retroactively as soon as I convince your master to free you. Or a man is sick in the hospital, Epis, and she's gonna be a very wealthy widow. And not only that, she's pretty good looking. So you go over and you say, here's a ring. As soon as your husband dies, let us be considered engaged. Okay?
Kind of tacky.
What?
A little bit tacky.
Yeah, but hey, a parnasa is a parnasa. You won't have to live on Social Security anymore.
He wanted to be the first one out.
And also, right, he wants to jump the gun here. As soon as your husband's dead. Or he's married to Rivka. Rivka has a sister, Leah. Rivka's in the hospital. Leah is still available. He says to Leah, here's a ring. It should have been Leah sick and Rivka, but here's a ring. As soon as Rivka dies, you'll be considered an erusa by me. Or la'acher shechal yavamech. Or you want the widow, but there's a yavam still in line. So you give her the ring and you say, he's probably going to do chalitza with you. Soon as you give him the boot, here's the ring. All of these cases we had before, einu mekadeshes. Retroactively, none of these cases are valid. So the issue of what happens if Bob doesn't occur, because all of this is shtus. None of these cases work, according to the Chachamim. However, Reb Meir Aimer Mikudeshes, in all of these cases, even though it's a davar she'eino ba'olam, they are married. So now you see how Rebbe Meir agrees davar she'eino ba'olam works. Now, we still had a couple more. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, what about him? The Tanya, Yeser Al-Kain, he gives another, he tells us something else, and then he says, and in addition, Omer Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Afilu im Aimar, even if you say, now this is a little bit a tricky case. You are a orchard, what, a farmer? I don't know whatever they're called.
Grower.
You are a date grower. Now, okay, now, or an olive grower. So now this would have been Truma D'Iraisa if it had been a Beis Hamikdash. You grow olives, and you have several rows of olives. So you're not going to be able to harvest all the olives in one moment, right? It's a period of time to harvest all the olives. The market, it's Sunday. Market day is Monday. You want to be able to sell olives, right? So what you want to do is say, I'm going to take truma on the still hooked, you're still attached olives from the detached olives. I'm going to estimate what it is. I'm going to take trumas and maestras, so none of the olives will be tevel, so that I'll be able to get to market on time, or vice versa. The bus is leaving in 15 minutes. I can't take trumas and maestras on the olives I've already harvested, so I say I'm going to take the trumas and maestras on these olives as soon as I detach the olives tomorrow morning from the next row. So that's the case. Perus, aruga, the perus in this row, tashlumin hayu truma al perus aruga zu mechaburim. Let the cut olives in this row act as trumas and maestras tomorrow on the perus that are right now still attached, or the other way around. Oh, perus arugazu michuborim that are still attached. Al perus arugazu tashlumin are going to become truma tomorrow on the perus that right now are already detached, so I can make the truck to run into market day. That's my example, but that's what's going on. Lekeshu vihu shlish v'yisalushu. Or I could say, I have these early harvesting olives. Now, because there are only a few olives around, these happen very, normally it's May before the olives are ripe, and I've got a whole row in March. Can you imagine how much money I can get for them? I mean, they're going to be delicacies in the market. So as soon as the other olives are a third ripe, which is the earliest you can pick them, because you could use green olives for olive oil, then they're not even blooming yet. Let them be trumas and maestras on this batch of early olives, so I don't have to take truma at this incredibly value-packed olives, right? So, the Heviu Shlish, Venice Lishu, I don't know, that's a Shvad. Okay, the Lishu, and as soon as they were a third, they were picked. Dvarav Kayamin. In all those cases that interestingly handled Trumas and Maestros is viable. Okay, so that's Rav Elazar ben Yaakov, even on the fruits that weren't even ripe yet, they were just merely blossoms or buds. He says you could do it. So that's clearly davar she'eino ba'olam. Okay, And of course, we already have Rabbi Akiva. Well, we'll run through them again. Rabbi Akiva, what? Mel, you had a question?
No.
Okay. Rabbi Akiva Tanan, because we already learned, Kainim Shani Isa Lepicha. Whatever I make in the future will belong to my husband, and he can't transfer it to anybody else. Ein tzorich lahafer. The Tanna Kama says that is a meaningless oath because it's davar she'ein ba'olam. Rabbi Akiva Omer Yafer. He does have to nullify that oath because otherwise it will be chol on davar she'ein ba'olam. So that then we have this long Messiah of all these people. And we gave a dozen cases, I think 7 really, that davar she'ein ba'olam is considered a valid transaction by an exceedingly long Messiah of heavy hitters. Boy, mine Rav Sheshes, so they asked Rav Sheshes. Now we're going back to the Yavama. And we're talking, we already said that a widow with one witness, if she's willing to take the chance, with the approbation of Bezdin, may we remarry. What if that widow is the wife of a husband who has no living children at the time he dies? Does this apply to giving the Yavam Rishus to take her? Okay, that's the new question. Boy, mine Reb Sheshes, Eid Echad, Mahu. Can she do yibum? Can she marry her brother-in-law on the basis of Eid Echad? So the Gemara kind of recaps. Time of the Eid Echad, the rationale for allowing a witness with only a single witness, allowing the woman to remarry. Mishum de milsa kada avda la aig luye lo meshaker. If there's a reasonable chance that the truth will out, nobody is going to tell a lie and be caught in telling a lie, so we accept the Eid Echad. Hachinami. So same deal. What's the difference? Well, if it's a guy down, that she hasn't met yet, or it's her brother-in-law, the truth will eventually out, and there'll be big problems. So the theory is that the woman is going to do research. We had this discussion a few times. The woman is just not going to, she's going to do resolve to her own satisfaction. She's going to Google him, whatever the facts. Yeah.
Why is the government coming out with the states of the Yavama? Why is that different from the regular ACCs?
We're going to tell you in a second. Okay? Because, Odilma, time of the Eid Echad, this is the normal case. What is the rationale of Eid Echad? The two possibilities are, one, that the witness is unlikely to lie, highly unlikely to lie, because if the guy's alive, he'll come home and the witness will be in trouble, and the woman will be in worse trouble. Or is the reason that before she accepts the notion of Eid Echad, I had conflated them. It's two reasons. Before she acts on the basis of the Eid Echad, she satisfies herself in her own mind that her husband is dead. In other words, she does her due diligence in American Lashon. Okay? A dilma, time of the Eid Echad is accepted. Mishum de ihi. She does her due diligence. But over here, with regard to the brother-in-law, the grass is always greener. She knows her missing husband is episode low life, but the co-wives of the brother-in-law are happy as can be. She would love to be married with the brother-in-law. So she doesn't bother doing her due diligence. So if the reason is that it's because the truth will out, he wouldn't lie, there's no reason to say she can't go to the Yavam. But if the reason is we don't want her to be impulsive, there is reason to say she can't go to the Yavam and he'd have to do Chalitza. It's not that he doesn't get involved. It's that we don't let him do Yibum because we don't want to encourage her to act hastily. Okay, that's the issue. Hacha Kevin, the Zimnin, the Rachmale. Here, she likes this guy. She will jump the gun with this guy. Lo Daika Minaspa. She won't do her due diligence and she'll marry him too soon. Okay? So that's why you might have a Havamina that she can't go to the Yavam. Okay, Marty? Okay?
Well, once she gets the Lisa, then she'll go marry somebody else.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
But she'll have
she's gonna do her due diligence. She's gonna look at the guy's resume. She's gonna call somebody up in Spain and say, "Have you seen my husband around?" In other words, she's not gonna jump the gun because she hasn't had the hots for this guy for the last 5 years. She's been in Almana all this time, and she's in that family, so she has this level of relationship with the members of the family, and she might be a little less stringent in her due diligence. All right?
The brother has to want to go along with it, right?
He always has that choice. She has no choice. However, as we know, even though women are theoretically don't have decisions to make, they manage to manipulate things so that they get their way all the time. I mean, I've been married 56 years. I happen to know that well. Okay, in my family, I always have the final word. Yes, dear. Okay, she says, "You're marrying me," and he'll say, "Yes, dear." Okay, so Omelahu Reb Sheshes. Reb Sheshes said already. Now we learned this earlier, but we're going to recap a rather complex series of cases. Tani Suhu. We learned this already. Amrullah. Now, the case was, we had this in the Mishnah. Sylvia is left at home in Israel. Her husband, Reuven, and little 8-year-old Yitzi go off to Spain. Okay? Now there's episode. Whatever happens, terrible happens in Spain. And her family in Spain is obliterated. Now, let's look at it. If the husband outlives Yitzi, even by a minute, even by a second, then he dies childless. But if Yitzi predeceases the father, even by a second, then the man, the father has to die first. And then there's no Yibum problem in Israel. If the kid dies first, then there is a Yibum problem in Israel, and the woman's not free to remarry. Now, Spain is very far from Israel. There is no texting. So it is not impossible to have conflict. They're both taken to the hospital. They're both in comas, both die. It's not impossible for conflicting information to come back as to who died first. In our world, we consider that very difficult because of our instant communication. But in previous Doros, that would have been a major issue. So now's the case. Amrullah, they tell her, Meis bonech, your kid died. V'achar kach meis bailech. And then at a later point in time, minutes, seconds, days later, your husband died. Okay? So on that basis, she is now the widow of a childless man. V'nis Yavma. And the brother-in-law scooped her up and married her. The Achar Kach Amrullah, and later on witnesses come and say, Chiluf Hadavarim, Fact of the matter is, the kid outlived the father. Now we have an erva situation. She's married a woman, remarried her brother-in-law. Can't do that. That's an erva. Okay? Tate say she has to get divorced from the brother-in-law slash husband. Vahavlad rishon v'acharon mamzer. And it doesn't matter if a child from that union was, I'm not sure whether it's conceived or born, but let's say it's conceived, was conceived prior to the news or after the news. We don't care. All the kids from that union are mamzerim. It's an erva. And they also both are, like now it's inadvertent, so they both would bring korbanos. Okay? Hachidami, what are the issues here? If you say two witnesses came and made the first statement that the kid died first, and then later on, after the family had evolved and there were children and everything, witnesses now show up and said that the husband died first. She was not to fall to Yibum. My chazis v'samchat ahane. What is the basis on which you would even have a dealing with the second witnesses? Because in halacha, once there's a hara'ah, once the Bezdin hears witnesses and makes a decision, you cannot appeal it, you cannot reopen it, that's a done deal. So why are we even taking into account the second witnesses? Samach ahane. Let's base the fact that it's a done deal. We had the first witnesses, especially since we don't want to make mamzerim. So the case cannot be two witnesses and two witnesses because the Bezdin would never reopen. But furthermore, again, mamzer, you're dealing with mamzerim. Suffolk mamzer who, at the best, it's only a Suffolk mamzer. V'chitema lodak. And if you say that when the Tana said he's just maybe a mamzer, mikatani sefer, but later on in that Mishnah we learned harishon mamzer v'achron ain't a mamzer. That if there's a situation where it's a faulty, she's not childless, so she didn't have to faulty yibum. She married a Brahmowitz based on an Eid Echad situation, or two witnesses rather, and now two more witnesses come. Even if you listen to the new witnesses, any children born while she was in Esashish, you have to say our mamzerim. You got no out. But if you can now definitively prove that he died on January 1st, and you can definitively prove that this child was conceived on February 1st, then at worst it was nus, and the kid is not a mamzer. So later on we see that we do take into account what the circumstances were. So we have to say, Shma mina, dafka katani, el lav shma mina chat. We have to say that the only reason this complex who died first issue arises is if it's the special circumstance, Erwin, of Eid Echad and the opprobrium of the Bezdin, okay? Which can now possibly be reopened. We learned that all these horrible things happened to her. So where it's Eid Echad, we're cutting her slack. We're not making her remain in a guna. But there's always in the back of everyone's minds that such a case can be reopened and the consequences can be horrible. And I tried to explain there to disincentivize her to cook up an aid. Yes?
Double jeopardy.
There's American laws that, and there even in the United States isn't always double jeopardy. You can now charge, if the guy is double jeopardy in New York State, the same crime. If it's also a federal crime, even though the state acquitted him, the feds can try him. So double jeopardy is not as limitless as you may think. In any event, the time of the Ase Beitre Ach Chashua, and the only reason that what it had to have been was one witness at the beginning and two witnesses later on. High love hachi, because if it didn't happen that way, meheman, 1-on-1, we'd have stuck with the first. Okay? So the Ikadamri, the others explain this case a little differently. Hala to boilach, there's no real question whether it was one witness or two witnesses. The afilu ihinami mahamena, because the fact of the matter is, Erwin, you don't even need Eid Echad. If Mr. and Mrs. Schwartz are the only two Jews on a cruise, and Schwartz dies, and the captain doesn't have a refrigerator, so they throw Schwartz overboard. They bury him at sea, and they get back to port. And Mr. Schwartz bounces down the gangplank, and they say, and her kids, somebody comes to pick her up, and they say, "Where's Izzy?" And she say, "Izzy isn't." Okay? Yeah, she's believed. She's the Eid Echad in this case. And she would be believed in the face of no other evidence than her statement. Well, what about other people on the boat? Could they testify? Well, there were no other Jews on the boat. So there is no possibility of any, I said, no Jews but her on the cruise. Okay? I worked very hard on these bon mots, Izzy isn't, and okay. We would even believe her. The Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Ha'isha sha'amra meis baili, my husband is dead. Tanase, she may, but Bezin will issue a death certificate and she may remarry. Okay? Meis baili, or if her husband had no sons, and she's the only person who knows her husband died. They were on this cruise. Yes, she can marry her brother-in-law. So there's no, why do we care who was the initial witness? She could do it herself. Key to boilach. So when would you actually have a question? So we have to say, we're going back to the as really unresolved issue of can a single witness matter her to the Yavam. Okay, I suggested then that because of the possibility she wouldn't do due diligence, the Yavam should just do chalitza to take that incentive for her to not do her due diligence and let her marry anybody else. So that comes out now to be the case we're really talking about. Kita boilach, what are we really talking about? What case are we really asking about? Lemishre yavama la'alma, to permit a yavama, a woman whose husband is childless, to go marry someone else. Okay? My time at the Eid Echad. So why are we allowing a single witness to testify? Mishum de milsa da avidna la agulye la mashker. That the likelihood that the truth will out will be a very strong incentive for someone not to lie. Okay? Hachinami. So, if that's the case, why can't she marry the Yavam, right? Hachinami lo mishaker. If there too, nobody's gonna lie. So the other possibility was a dilma time of the eight echad. The reason we say except one echad, eight echad, mishum deihi daika uminaskba, that she will be very careful and hire private detectives and stuff. She'll do her due diligence. Vaha, but because she has the hots for the yavam, ha lo daika minaska ba, she would not do her due diligence. And we got to the absolute bottom of the page, and I can turn over to Kenny tomorrow with good faith. What?
Is he here tomorrow?
He emailed me that he's taking over tomorrow.
Oh, yeah?
So, yeah, from his email to God's ears.
Last two words, the next page is you finish it.
Yeah,
What?
last 2 words. 2 more words on the
Last
next
2
page.
words.
I didn't do the two.
Yeah, next 2 words. Yeah.
What, 2 more words? What are the next 2 words? Okay. The who the sign lay. So why do we prohibit him from doing yibum and make him do chalitza? Because the other side of the coin is familiarity breeds contempt.
Great.
Style,
Very good.
Okay. Have a good
Okay,
summer,
huh?
everyone.
You caught up.
Okay, you
And you're right on target.
And I caught up. Baruch
Bye,
Hashem.
Michael.
I was a whole half block behind because of Irwin.
Irwin.
No, Irwin kept challenging. How could they do that to the poor widow?
I'm not saying she doesn't deserve penalty, but they're throwing the kitchen sink at her too.
Well, but you first of all, you saw that was not a unilateral point of view.
Taking any responsibility for having examined the witness and saying the witness was good.
Well, that's where we got to that now, that she's expected to do her due diligence.
Bye, Harvey.
Hey, Bob. Ken is coming back
Court
tomorrow?
does the best it can.
That's what they say.
All right. I'll be in Chicago. All right. I'll catch it then.
Chicago. Have a good day.
You too.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Michael, you get a good Chicago.